Over the years, I collected a good amount of questions, so today it's Q&A time. Hey everyone, Stephan here. I hope you're doing well. As I mentioned, some questions seem to creep up over and over and over again, be it at workshops or direct messages or whatever it may be. So I thought today we'll have a little bit of a Q&A session and I'll just answer some of those reoccurring questions. Now, the moment I look over there, well, that's where my list of questions is. So we start with the first one, which is, what is your style and which are you really good at? Well, let's put it this way. There's a lot that I'm not very good at. One of them is landscapes and cityscapes. I'm just drawn to people. Whenever I'm going to places, and I'm very often lucky to visit some amazing places, I'm always drawn to special moments or special characters. And I sometimes forget that I should probably take in the big vista as well. I am a portrait photographer. I love interacting with people and capturing, I guess, their beauty, their personality, whatever it may be. On the other side, I'm a dance photographer as well. It's probably, I would say, about 70% of what I do now is dance photography, mostly ballet. I love quirky things. So it's portrait and dance photography. Then, do you use flash, and if so, what brand? Yes, I would say about 90% of my work is lit, simply for the reason that I like to have control. In my studio, I have skylights, so I could shoot daylight, but with strobes, I know exactly what I get, and I can overpower the sun, so I can turn a white seamless background into a gray or into even black. And I can set up different lighting scenarios. So before someone comes in, I can already set it up and create different moods without just being fixed to whatever the sun gives me. What brand? Well, I'm not much of a label basher, to be honest. I do have some Pro Photos, which are great because you can throw them against the wall and pick them up and they still work. But then I also used Bowens for a very long time because they were sort of a good middle ground. Lately, I'm using more and more Godox, simply because the bang for the buck, you get a lot of power for relatively little money compared to Broncolor or Profoto. At the end of the day, however, I don't believe that there is a huge difference. I guess if you, I don't know, run a roadshow and you really throw your stuff around, it might be a difference. But at the end of the day, light is light. So you can use the cheapest lights from, I don't know, a hardware store. If you know how to diffuse it and how to use it, and if you photograph interesting subjects, I don't think the brand makes much of a difference. What do you ask your client before you shoot? That's an interesting question because there's several answers. I think you have to separate between a private customer or client, someone who, I don't know, wants family photos, or maybe a young model who wants to create a portfolio, or if you talk commercial clients. So with commercial clients, I guess the first thing that I ask is, what is my subject? What do I photograph? And B, what is it used for? Because that determines the price. If I know what an image is used for, let's say for an advertising campaign, in what area? Is it nationwide? Is it just for a state? Is it for half a year? Is it for 2 years? That heavily influences the licensing price. So very often if I shoot a private person, it could be, just for their own use, which is fine. Then we don't talk about licensing. But if it's for Coca-Cola and they want to use the photo in 136 countries and they want time and media unlimited rights, well, the licensing price will look very, very different. So that's the second question I ask, what it is used for, in what media and for how long. And then for private people, I usually ask them to send me examples of photos they like. Now, I assume if they contact me that they like my personal style of what I do. However, it has happened that I got requests for things that I generally don't do. And I always want to know, what do they expect? And then I decide, can I meet those expectations? Now, I don't want to just meet those expectations. I like to surprise the customer. I like to over deliver, give them something extra, something more. And that generally has to do with my personal style. And if they send me photos that don't match what I do, I'm more hesitant to maybe not accept a job. But yeah, that's pretty much what I ask for. What else do we have here? What do you look for before a job or a project? It goes sort of in the same direction. I see if I feel there is a match. If I feel that this is a project that I really want to do, great. If it's a project that I'm okay to do, well, I'll take it, because at the end of the day, I have kids and these are hungry beasts. And for some reason, it's really strange. For some reason, they want food on the table every single day. So yeah, I'll do those. If, however, there is a misconnect, if I feel that the sample images or the concept doesn't fit within how I think or what I believe or what my style is, I might reject the job and then help them to find the right photographer if I can. How do you prepare for a shoot? Well, if I know who I photograph, as in the person, I usually ask them for the height. And I have several mannequins in the studio on different heights. So I set them up so that I pretty much can light in the scene as if the person would be there. So that I can set a hair light that is pretty much exactly where it should be. That I usually set up 5 to 6 different strobes in the studio. I don't use them all for one photo, very rarely. But what I might do is set 2 lights up to create a perfect white background. I might create 2 lights from the sides to create some dramatic lighting. I usually use one on the left, one on the right, depending on, every face is different. Some look better with light from the left or light from the right. The same with when I shoot dances. Some people turn better to one direction or have one stronger leg, and then you have to, adjust the light. And instead of running around and moving light stands around, I like to have them there or just on different groups, and I can easily on the remote just then switch one on or the other and make it, I guess, as perfect as possible for the person. And then what other lights would I set up? I would set up probably a beauty dish, 45 degrees for a harder, more edgy kind of light, and then maybe a big octa as well. So that would be about 6 lights. And I have them all on different groups. So when the person walks in, they can just walk in, stand there, first click, and wow, it looks great. Magic happened. Well, the magic happened 2 hours before with a light meter and running around and setting it all up. What do you think during a shoot? Well, first of all, since I work with people, I want to make sure that they're at ease. I want to make sure that they feel free to try out different things. I think I mentioned that in a previous episode when I talked about becoming a people person. And then that starts a long time before you actually push the button. When someone arrives, I'm not just sitting behind the reception chewing on a pencil or something. No, I go out in a car park and help them with the suitcase out of their trunk. And during the makeup time, I might have a conversation about kids and swimming lessons and me being daddy Uber for the family or whatever. Stuff that just puts them at ease. During the photo shoot, to be honest, I mostly think about ratios, angles. I've had it before that I shot a whole series of photos, not recognizing that or not realizing that I made a mistake, that there was something in the photo that, either something with the wardrobe or whatever. And I heavily rely on a stylist to keep an eye on these sort of things, because during the shoot I'm so focused on getting the eyes perfect, to get the expression. I'm mainly focused on here. And then sometimes I do miss a few things, so I have to remind myself to look at the whole picture. Do you have any technical tips for the shoot? Yeah, that comes exactly back to what I just said. I always have to remind myself to do the 360, to do the border control, to make sure that nothing is disturbing the image, especially when you're out and about. You have an ugly trash can on the right, or you have a light pole growing out of someone's head. I have to do the border control, look through the frame all around to see if there's any distracting elements in the background. Quite often it can be a great photo if only something in the background wouldn't have disturbed it, or interrupted it, or whatever you want to call it, killed it. Happens. But yeah, I think make sure that you set up everything beforehand if you can, so that the subject comes in and feels like a superstar. That's when you photograph people. And do the 360 border control, make sure that the background helps and doesn't distract. Thoughts process for personal projects. I mention this in every single workshop, in every presentation, that I believe personal projects are super important. Doesn't matter what stage of photography you are. If you're a beginner, of course, personal projects give you that experience. It's super important to, I guess, do your training. If you're an athlete, well, you don't sign up for the Olympics straight away. You do your hours and weeks and months and years of training. I think the same applies to photography. You have to get that experience. And the best way to do it is working on personal projects, because then nobody tells you what to do. You can come up with your own ideas and try to realize them. And the beautiful thing is, you can fail as much as you want. You might have to explain it to, I don't know, your friend or a model that you're working with for your personal projects, but it's perfectly fine to mess up. And I guess if you would ask me what is my biggest strength, or what am I best at, then I would probably say learning and messing up. Because I've tried so many different things that didn't work out, but hopefully I've learned a few things, and then the next time I try to create new mistakes, but don't repeat the old ones so much. So personal projects, the way I approach it is that I want to come up with the concept first. So it's paper and pen. I want to know, what do I want to say with this? Is there a message in it? And how does it bind in with maybe a series of images, or with work that I've done before? So that's, as I said, paper and pen. And once I've done that, I have to find people that I can convince to go with the crazy and support me with it, be it model, stylists, makeup artists, whatever it may be. And then I'll just do it. Sometimes it costs me money, sometimes it doesn't, but I think it's super important that I do those. Even though I work as a professional photographer and I make a living with it, I will reserve time for personal projects so that I can grow. I don't want to stay where I am. I want to become better or different, change my game, or keep my passion alive, I guess. Do you reject jobs? Yes, I do. I mentioned that before. If I find that it's not a perfect fit, I will openly discuss that, and I will tell the client, maybe not, hey, I don't like you, use slightly nicer wording. But if I find it's not a fit, if I find I cannot provide them with the images they're looking for, then I will see if I find an alternative for them. If I know a photographer who does that. I mean, I get a lot of requests for weddings, and I'm not a wedding photographer. So I will refer them to someone who will look after them. What if something goes wrong? Well, admit it. Just that simple. Pick up the phone. Don't do the email thing. Pick up the phone and call your client and tell them that something didn't go right. Now, in the studio, it's relatively simple because I shoot tethered, and the client or my subject, they can walk over to the computer and have a look. And usually that's a very helpful thing, either for coaching, that I say, look, you think that the way you do it right now looks a certain way. Come over here, have a look. And you see this, can we change that? It's very helpful tool. And then at the end of the day, before the people leave, they've seen on the screen already the, well, at least unretouched results. But it happens that afterwards I look through all the photos and find that maybe we didn't hit the brief 100%. And that's the moment when I pick up the phone and I just tell them, said, look, I think it would be great if we could reshoot or if we could improve it. I think there's two ways how to keep a client, not just for one shoot, but to come back. One is to over deliver. And it's those small little things like, you know, helping them getting the suitcase out of their car, or, you know, over delivering. Maybe you shoot exactly what they expect and then you try a few other things and give them that little bit extra. But the other thing that I find really cements a good relationship is being honest and also admitting if something didn't work out. I have clients where the first shoot just didn't work out. I mean, we created great photos, but it wasn't exactly what I expected, at least. So I picked up the phone. I think it's super important to have that human connection rather than text. And I explained that, look, I think the photos are great, but I think we can do better. And that turned into a many years working business relationship. So admit it. If you mess it up, say so. What else do we have? Quick rounds. Okay, so these are just sort of one-step questions I get all the time. One of them is, what is your favorite lens? 70 to 200, 2.8. That's sort of the lens that I use, I would say 99% of the time. I like the look of it, especially for portraits. There's this weird thing, I don't know, it's still flying around on the interwebs. It's that the 85mm is the perfect portrait lens. I don't believe that. From my personal experience, or from my personal like a gusto or taste, I think the perfect range is around the 105 to 200. That's when I believe the proportions of a face look the best. In other words, the way I film myself right now with a 24 to 70, this is not flattering, or not as flattering as it could be. Yeah, I think sort of between the 85 and the 200, but more towards the 200 would be the perfect sort of focal length for in terms of proportions. I've done a video about the myth of lens compression where I sort of tackle that a little bit. So if you're interested in that, go back. What's your favorite camera? I'm a Nikon guy. This doesn't mean that that's my favorite camera. It's just the camera that I use. I find it interesting when people ask me and say, okay, I want to buy a new camera. Which one should I buy? To be honest, these days, it's very hard to buy a bad camera. I mean, nowadays, the cameras are just amazing. I recommend people go into the store and touch them. For me, a Nikon fits perfectly in my hand. I love the way it feels. It feels sturdy. I'm very, very comfortable. I use it now for so long that I can absolutely blindly change settings in the middle of darkness. And it just feels right for me. But then again, if you use a Canon, a Sony, a Fuji, a whatever, if it feels right for you, great. That's simple. What's the one thing, gadget or gear, you can never have enough of? Camera bags. There is no such thing as the perfect camera bag. I have a ton of them, and I know my friends, my photographer friends, they're exactly in the same boat. You have, a big Pelican case where you have a ton of expensive gear in it, and then you have a light bag, and you have a messenger bag if you're just running and gunning, and you have a Levy Pro, and you have Peak Design, which I think create amazing bags. I have so many different bags, and I use all of them for different things, for different setups, for different gears. Camera bags, you can never have enough. What gear do you pack for travel? I'm lazy and I'm getting old. My back is hurting. So less is more. When I travel for business, of course, I take all the gear with me that I need. But if I have time, I'm out of the hotel and just stroll the cities for myself. To be honest, I'll take one camera body, a lens that is as flexible as possible, that goes from wide to close. Is it the best quality? Usually those big zooms? No, but it's fine. And I take a ton of photos on my iPhone. So yeah, when it comes to my job, I'm extremely picky. But when it comes to taking impressions, whatever doesn't kill my back, less is more. And if I don't have to change lenses, I don't miss moments. I've seen it so many times that I had like 3 different lenses with me traveling, and I never had the correct one with me. So having a zoom that does it all, I don't know, from 20 to 200 or 300, yeah. I'll give up a little bit of quality versus prime lenses and so on, but I'll take the convenience any day. And my back is thank you. What is the best camera for portraits? There's no such thing. There's no perfect. It's what you do with it. What's the best lens and focal length for portraits? I think I've answered that. Somewhere between 85 and 200. What's your favorite photographer? I don't have a favorite photographer. I'm a fan of a lot of people who create amazing work. Some of them totally unknown, some of them super famous. Some of them I call my friends, and I don't know if I like their work because I'm friends with them or because they're so good. I'm inspired by people who do rather than dream. You know, there's this weird thing of, oh, if you can dream it, you can do it. No, I don't believe that. I believe you can do it when you do it. And this whole bullshit of fake it until you make it is also rubbish. I think you have to make it until you make it. You have to go out and put the hours in. You have to work. And these people that I look up to and the photographers that I love their work, they're working day in, day out. And even though they might already be high-end pros, they still do their personal projects. They still try to improve their craft or finesse certain techniques. So I could not name one. It's I'm a big fan of a lot of people, and not just photographers, of course. I mean, my influence goes a lot further. Who do you look up to? Oh man, my kids. I try to teach them. At the same time, I realize that I'll learn more from them than I can teach them. I try to be a good dad, but most of the time I observe them and I learn myself. So that's my biggest inspiration, is probably my wife, my kids, thinkers, doers, people who don't just dream but actually do, people who have the guts to fail, people who are authentic, who show that they're vulnerable, people who have no problems with looking shit, and doers, not just dreamers. Dreaming is great, doing is better. To improve my photography, what do I need to invest my time in, and what do I have to buy? You know, the whole buying thing. Oh, if I would only have this lens. Oh, if I would only have this camera. If I would only have that light, then. That is total rubbish. You can create amazing work with shit gear. Now, there's a caveat though, of course. If you want to be a sports photographer on Olympic proportions, then yes, you need the best gear you can buy. You need big lenses because you're probably far away. You need high ISO performance because, you know, the light is going to change and you will not be able to set up lights and so on and so forth. Yes, there are those limitations, but generally speaking, forget about buying the next best thing. I think to really improve, or that's at least for me, to really improve, you have to find your niche. You have to find what you are the happiest with, where your passion keeps going, and then you have to see what improves your work and the outcome. Now, in my case, I talk about people photography and I talk about dance photography. In people photography, it's all about body language. It's understanding proportions and angles. It's understanding how you can help someone to look their best. And someone might look the best this way or up or down. And it's the question of what they do and what the camera is doing and what the light is doing. And the more I understand about the body language, the more I understand about angles, the better my photos will be. And the lens has a lot less to do with it than the coaching part, the way I interact with people. I mentioned that so many times before, but that's so important. I need to be able to help them find a position that makes them look as amazing as possible. In dance photography, it goes a step further because I personally am not a dancer. Who would have guessed? But in especially with ballet, technique is everything. So I might look at a photo and I think, wow, this is amazing, a beautiful leap. Oh my God, she can jump so high. But the devil sits in the details. All those small little things that only a professional ballet dancer would see, that is the difference. So what I have to do is to learn these techniques, not to do it, but to see it, to recognize it. The best way to do it is, of course, to have a professional dancer with you on the shoot that looks for these things. Plus, they speak their own language. You know, fondue to me is something to eat, not for a ballet dancer. So, you know, turnout and. These are things that a professional dancer or a good teacher will instantly see. So make sure that when you do dance photos or create dance photos, to have someone on the set that understands these things and can correct them and, you know, tell them in their terms what they have to do and correct. And if you do this like me for 25 years, you do see those things. I correct people on things that I would say the majority people will not see. However, every dancer who has danced or has learned it properly knows that you spend so much time in front of the mirror perfecting the technique that it has to show in the photos as well. Anything else here? Now, I guess I'll leave it at that. That was already long enough. The questions keep going. Maybe I'll do a second part. But for now, I think if there's one thing I want you to take away from it is that the best thing you can do for yourself is, number one, learn your camera inside out. It's like in the army when you have to disassemble your gun and put it back together in complete darkness. You have to know where every little screw is, because then in the photo shoot you can concentrate entirely on your subject rather than thinking about camera settings, how do I do this and that and the other. This is something that everybody can do at home. You can photograph a bottle of water and just play around with the camera, but this should be the absolute step number one. You have to know your gear, and that's easy. But then go out and do it. Do it, do it, do it. Mess up, fail, rinse, repeat, do it. In terms of money, asking for money, it's something that gets me a little bit going. I see people who just pick up a camera, call themselves a pro, and ask for big money. Well, you have to create a portfolio that speaks for itself. You have to create a body of work. You have to show that experience so that if you are in difficult situations, in the weather changes or whatever it may be, that you know how to react. That comes from experience. So do it, rinse and repeat. That's, I guess, what creates magic. I believe magic is like an invisible butterfly. If you try holding out the hand, it will never land. It will just fly by. But if you're patient, and if you sit there and you give magic a moment, it will stop and it will kiss the bride and you will create an absolutely amazing photograph. But to do so, you have to be there, you have to be ready. That was very long. I hope it was a little bit helpful. Maybe I'll do another one with the rest of the questions or with more questions. For now, I say thank you for being with me, and go out and create something awesome.